cloud. There we go. And team, if you can admit folks in as they come into the weight room, that'd be great. All right. Well, thank you all for staying on here, and for the ambassadors for joining us today for this really important conversation. As many of you hopefully know, the business partnership our mission is to make Johnson County the best place to live, work, and learn. The for all is implied, and perhaps should be explicit, because as part of this mission, we're committed to making this a welcoming and inclusive place for all to grow and thrive. And our business community plays just such a huge role in that, and we as the business partnership play a role in helping to cultivate that culture and ensure our systems and practices are inclusive and equitable. As you hopefully know, the business partnership team has been taking incremental steps over the past couple of years to improve our own internal DEI practices, as well as engage with partners to start driving action to address racial equities across our community. We conducted Humanize My Hoodie ally training early this year. This team continues to learn as much as we can by using resources like the Anti-Racism Daily Newsletter and United Way's 21-Day Challenge. We continue to lobby for legislation that promotes a welcoming environment for everyone, which you'll see next month when Jenny shares our state legislative priorities. We're on the advisory board for Inclusive ICR, which is a regional effort. We're partnering with local organizations like RE Connect to ensure that minority-owned businesses have the same access to capital as their white peers. And we've been making efforts to diversify our staff and our board, our committees, and our membership to ensure we've got all voices at the decision-making table. But with all that said, we know we have a lot more to learn and to do, and people we need to engage to really move the needle. And that's why we're inviting our board and our ambassadors to join us for this series of conversations about how the business partnership can just better serve our minority-owned businesses and create a stronger ecosystem of support. And it starts with getting a better understanding of the challenges of minority-owned business owners, leaders, community members, so we can advocate for them and make real change. And so last month we had Lee Vasquez, who is a Coralville resident, a CLP alum, former leader of the Quad Cities Hispanic Chamber, and talk about the challenges and opportunities for Hispanic-owned businesses. And I'm so grateful that Chad Simmons was willing to be part of this conversation today, so we can learn more about the particular challenges and opportunity for Black-owned businesses. Chad is a member of the business partnership, a member of our board, and most importantly, I think a brutally honest teacher who you can be real with, ask questions you feel funny asking, and just have really thought-provoking conversations. And for those of you who don't know Chad, he's chairman of the Iowa Soul Food Company and co-owner of Sugar Peach, which you all need to try if you haven't already. They've got, I think, the best sweet potato fries in town. And prior to this, he was president and CEO of Diversity Focus, which focused on assisting our regional community with becoming a model of inclusion. And prior to that, he was a human resource leader for organizations including UIHC, Kraft, Nabisco. He's a University of Iowa Tippie School of Business MBA graduate and has his BA in business from Morehouse College. Chad, thank you again for agreeing to have this conversation with us, and the Zoom room is now yours to kick things off. And so do you need to share a screen or anything?
Yes, I'll need to share a screen.
Okay, I'm going to make you co-host then.
Listen, it's good to have everyone here. I'm hoping that we can have some good discussion. There are going to be some things that I will talk about. Some of them will be sensitive. Some of them will make us feel uncomfortable. We, as the pandemic has taught us, have learned to be comfortable being uncomfortable and still figuring out how to move forward and how to continue the process of our growth. There's a lot that has been going on over the past couple of years. It's going to continue to intensify. There's a lot that is happening that is really putting people in a situation where they're feeling like they need to act. And there's a lot of misunderstanding, and there's a lot of kind of co-opting messages that are putting some folks in harm's way. Traditionally, we will have challenges in having this discussion because there will be sometimes this feeling that people may have that we are blaming them for the problems that exist within the world. In many cases, what we talk about is the experience of institutional racism, which is really about how things are baked within the cake to make it so that it becomes very difficult for one to move forward, not because of any individual or how they feel or what they think, but because of the system is designed that it is made in such a way that people aren't giving a fair opportunity to be able to be creative and be able to take that creativity and move it from one place to another. It is not my hope. It is actually my prayer that we can have the discussion without you all feeling that it is you who is the problem, but that you're feeling that it is you who is the solution. And traditionally, I will say at the end something that will be fairly controversial, but when it comes to solving the problem, that we each have a role in that, but we each must make a decision about how we want to participate or not to participate. We as Black folks have experiences that have permanently scarred us from believing certain things. When it comes to the pandemic, and that everyone talks about vaccines, we think about the Tuskegee experiment. When it comes to economic development, and we talk about growth and building businesses, we think of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Greenwood. We do have experiences that are passed on from generation to generation that don't prevent us from doing things, but makes us understand that sometimes doing things can put us in harm's way. And in most cases, we do have experiences where we've seen our leaders who have been put aside, who have been killed, who have been lynched, and those experiences have changed the way that we, in essence, interact with others. So I do want to, again, just have a discussion that we can really talk about moving forward, but talk about the foundations of some things that may be getting in our way. Around a year ago, as a lot of these discussions were happening, and specifically the move around Black Lives Matter started to continue to pick up steam, there was a question I think that we had in our community, which is what can we do to help? And there was that question as related to the economic development community was, what is it we can do to help? And so what I attempted to do was to pull the leaders together, including Kim and Nancy and others, to really talk about, here's in essence kind of what's going on. This is what, in essence, you can do to help. You want to know, this is what you can do to help. But the reality that we understand in the community is that if there's going to be change with us, there's going to be change that happens by us, that's going to be managed for us, and that's not going to be co-opted by others. Unfortunately, a year later, you can see many of the messages have been changed so that people stay away from things like defunding the police, or they stay away from economic empowerment. And so there have been some challenges. But I want to share with you the presentation that I gave to them, and then start having some discussions about that. Can you all see the presentation?
Yes.
All right. So when we think about the overall, the issue around the strategy, diversity used to be deemed as something that was very positive. And it was deemed, the traditional concept of it was that we're all better if we all work together, that there's value in each one of us and what we bring, and there's value that what it can bring to our given community. That was really what the intention was. And in many cases, it was something that was accepted because people did not find themselves to be what I would say at threat for it. It did not necessarily negatively impact their lives, though it had a positive impact on their lives and had a positive impact on others. With diversity focus, these were the 5 areas that were the strategy, with the second area really being around economic development, that you really cannot have true inclusion if you really aren't allowing people to break through and being able to create a sense of wealth that needs to happen, in essence, for that community to be successful. We talked about developing relationships with individuals and organizations that support the growth of Black wealth building through entrepreneurship and small business development. So we're very much in line with what this group does and what the economic team does, very much in line with that. And we understand that there are certain things that people don't really understand, some of the barriers that exist for us, because they traditionally don't exist for everyone, or people have other ways of, in essence, being able to get around some of those barriers. And I talked to them about the past 7 months may have created questions about why the Black community has responded to COVID-19 and the recent murders of Black bodies. And let's talk, not take, a few minutes to address some of your questions and thoughts and concerns. So I first just like to open it up by really just saying, there may be things that are on your mind, and I would love to be able to help facilitate some of the questions that you may have, or some of the things that you may have been thinking about that you traditionally would not have anyone to talk to. And so I'd like to know, what are your questions about some of the things that have been happening over the past couple of years?
I'll go ahead. I'm Claire McGranahan. I work at UIHC, and I am just wondering, is there assistance, help, a message, something that I, as a privileged white person, can do to actually help drive this conversation forward in a meaningful way? Or, as you alluded to, you don't want any messages changed. I don't want to be part of the problem. I do want to be part of the solution, but it's hard, especially in Iowa with so much whiteness. So where do we start here in Iowa City?
I think that's an excellent question about where we start and what we can do to, in essence, change. I would say there are a couple of things that I would ask you to kind of take a look at. There is a podcast. It's called what is the podcast?
Southlake. Southlake.
Thank you. Southlake. There's a podcast called Southlake. They've done 5 of the 6 episodes. The last episodes come on Monday. I would really strongly encourage you all to listen to that podcast. There's a gentleman, Russell Maryland, who's a past Dallas Cowboy, went to University of Miami. He's actually a classmate of mine in high school. And it talks about the experience of a community that realized that they were having a problem and the way that they, in essence, responded to that problem. It tells you that there are some forces that, again, when they start listening to messages and they start initially finding what the challenge is, what it can be converted to. And so what I would want you to know is that there is going to be a part of having the conversation that needs to be with people that can put you in a safe space so that you can really talk openly and honestly about the issues that are going on. The things that are changing now is that the population of minority groups are growing. The population of the groups around race that consider themselves white are actually shrinking. The opportunities for whites are leveling to the same opportunities for people of color. And it's creating a sense of, from my perspective, it's creating a sense of pain that is allowing some things to come out in the open. So it was one thing is that you're white and you had certain levels of privilege. Then it became that, I can see others who are successful, so I can be successful. And now there are many people that are realizing that their ability to be successful because of their race is probably starting to change drastically. And that has created a lot of concerns. But what I would tell you is that the first part of having that conversation is really focusing on educating yourself about what's going on, educating yourself about what other people are experiencing. And there are many ways, again, through podcasts and through conversations, there are many ways in essence, of being able to gather information. But just remember that you're part of the solution. You should not feel guilty for your privilege. You should just understand that you have it, and that you can, in essence, continue to leverage it to help others. And we'll talk as we go through more of this presentation. Other questions?
Chad, I don't know if you're already going to touch on this later a little bit. This is Jenny. I think for me as a business owner, and I know there's other ones here, like I would love, right, that for the Black community to feel like, hey, there's a local business. I have an opportunity to grow with them. But when we are majority white and most of our people that come to interview, right, are from referrals. So we tend to, right, hang out with people that look like us, talk like us, things like that. So short of how to, this probably sounds a little goofy, but where do I go walk into, where there's a bunch of Black men and women that would love an opportunity locally to grow and have a new profession that they didn't even know existed in Iowa City for them, without it being like, who's this white woman walking in here, thinks she's going to, try to get one of us when she has all white people besides a handful, of others, and I just want to be real. Like I admit to some, like I don't want to come off either worse, like, what do you know? I want to help and I need great employees. So if I don't care if you've never worked in this industry, and I would love to help increase the diversity, but how do this is similar when we talk to Lee, how do we let people know we would welcome qualified people regardless of your race? And I would love to, show them these opportunities. What does that look like as an owner? Where do we go? How do we, I would say job fair for diversity, like, but what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a excellent question. And it kind of is the intersection between dealing with our staffing challenges and then dealing kind of with our racial challenges. But a couple of things for you to know is that people of color know that they live in a community that's predominantly white. We all understand that. We all understand that we have to operate in that overall community. We understand that if we try to do anything, whether it's have a business or whether, we know that, again, we're in most cases that we're going to work with people who are deemed to be white, deemed to have experiences that are different than us. We're fully aware of that. So I don't think you have to worry about people not knowing that they're going to be in that environment when it comes to work. We just, if we wanted if we were wanting it to be in an all Black community, then we'd be probably somewhere in Chicago or New York or Atlanta, which right now is probably the hottest of the hot spots as far as for Black Americans. But so we know that. I think the focus of what you want to do is really to think about the culture that you have. and explore whether the culture that you have is going to be supportive of people coming in who are very different. And then you have to really start thinking about the people that you have working there, because they're the keepers and the holders of the culture. And that's where you really want to probably invest your time in first making sure that you kind of have a culture, there. And I think there's the ability to invite people to come and give you a feeling about whether you have a culture that in essence is going to support the type of diversity that you want. If you don't currently have people of color and you bring in people of color, then at the beginning of the experience, you're going to lose some of them, primarily because you're not asking, but what happens is that there's a pressure on them to help modify the culture to make sure that others can survive. And it is that modification that is very stressful on people. And that's where tendency will people say, well, they have to opt out. It to be honest, it's just a part of doing business. It doesn't mean you should stop, but it does mean you should understand. And so you want to be able to create that. There are opportunities to do that. We can talk more offline, but there are opportunities to kind of connect with folks. I'm not one of those to say you need to get a Black friend and then that Black friend will help you get into the community. What I will say is that there's the opportunity of working with young folks. There's the opportunity of working folks at the University of Iowa. There's the opportunity of supporting those events that are happening on campus that are specifically designed to support the organization. So that would be the brief, kind of the brief summary, but culture trumps everything.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm sorry, Chad, this is Roy saying, and I would just like to say bingo, bingo, bingo. Everything that you just said is just what has happened this past week. You talked about the pandemic and everything that has happened over the year. So within the last year, the Iowa City Council put together the TRC. There has been trouble within the Black people on the TRC from the beginning. And so just Tuesday night, the Iowa City Council literally was going to pay out the budget that the TRC had put together for $197. And that was to pay a firm that was out of state all this money to come in and train and do a training and teaching of racial equity in our community. Well, we as the Black community went in, told the people how we feel about somebody from the outside coming in to do the work. Iowa City Council paying this money for someone to come in and train, teach, and do racial equity when we have people locally that can do it right here. We just had this conversation. So I just want to say the vote did not go through because the community spoke out. The Black community showed up and showed out. The Black community, including 2 pastors, showed up to say, please do not pay an outside firm to come in to work with our community when we have people who look just like us. We have people who can do the work right here in our community. So this is something that, just to hear this is something we just went through, where the community of Black people stood up to say, we do not want you to pay $200,000 to a firm that know nothing about our community.
I think, Royce, I think you raised a real good point. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to use you kind of as an example. Roxanne has been in the community focusing on issues, whether it's education or health, whether it's opportunity. She has been a very big voice in trying to say, hey, there's a problem, and here's the problem, and here's how we can fix it. There's a problem, here's the problem, this is how we can fix it. And what happens is, again, this happens traditionally with our leaders, is that, they are listened to, they understand that they have quote unquote political clout, but they're not necessarily their ideas or the concepts are not necessarily followed through until they get enough people to say, I told you there's a problem, you know, we have a problem and here's how to fix it. And it gets into the issue of outsourcing. So I'm going to be just real with you. Training in most cases is a waste of time. Training is an issue when people do not know something and they need to know something and they need some support in essence in doing it. And in many cases, going to the outside to bring someone in, we do it because traditionally it allows there to be what I call street cred from a community to believe that the outside person will add value to come on the inside and they'll be listened to. And really what it says is, we don't listen to you on the inside. So we'll go to the outside to see if people will be more receptive to hearing the message from someone else, which is really demoralizing overall from the situation. There are people that understand our pain and can express to you the pain that we're feeling. And there are other people that do understand that there are ways of fixing it and can address to you how we want to fix it. Reconnect is, again, one of those organizations that says, hey, we understand what you're doing. There are ways that we can help you get to what we need. Please be careful about investing that money in them versus investing the money in us. And there are other things that happen that are, well, we'll create something, but we as a business organization, is naturally the way we do things, says, if we're going to invest in this thing that you want us to do, we want to be a part of the board. We want to watch to make sure that the money is being used correctly. And here's where the challenge is. And I experienced this with Diversity Focus. If the people don't truly understand the solution, they don't understand the problem, or they understand the problem and they don't understand the solution, then their feedback to solve the problem or to get approval to solve the problem becomes irrelevant. It actually siphons and hurts us, it hurts us from actually achieving the goal that in essence that we put in place. And I'm a Generation Xer. And what I would tell you is that my dad created, when he birthed me and put me into the world, he in essence said, we the baby boomers have taken care of the issue, and the Generation Xers, things are wide open for you. So there were things that I believed that I find now that I am older, that I find that they're just not true. There are opportunities that I thought that I really had, that I really found that I really didn't. And it can make someone like me extremely angry because of that, because I wasted my time believing something that ultimately was never true. So what I would say to you and say, as you start thinking about even the words of what Roxanne said is that there is a lot of power in really listening to the person, not just the label. It's not just, we want to defund the police, when really what they're saying is, we want to align the police so that they have resources to address the issue with the right folks. But defunding the police makes people believe we want to get rid of the police. And they'll never get to the message. So these are things that that I would ask, that when you start choosing to invest, go to the community and really figure out whether that's truly the best investment. Other questions? So when I was putting things together, and again, from my business perspective, there's always the question about what can we do? So, I pulled, we have very sharp leaders, very smart. Traditionally, they come up with solutions that make a lot of sense. Is always kind of the issue around the detail about what, in essence, should happen. And so what I did is I said, okay, look, I have 3 listed here. I actually created one also for our Convention and Visitors Bureau, and with Josh, and had one for him as well. But at the beginning, I came up with 3, and I said, when it comes to the business partnership, there are things that we need to address. One is the targeted small business. If you are unfamiliar with that, the state has a targeted small business, a designation for those, again, who are businesses that are veterans, that are people of color, and I believe that are handicapped or have some type of, some type of disability, for them to, in essence, get preferential treatment when it comes to doing business with the state. You have to go through this long process. You have to prove that, as I jokingly say, you got to prove, that if you're Black, you have to prove that you're Black. And then once you get in, you're supposed to have this treatment that's supposed to allow you to get some of these state contracts. Well, first thing is, it's incredibly difficult to actually go through and do the process. They have you jump through hoops. And not every business is a business that needs to have a state contract, in essence, to be able to survive. And so what I was saying for us is, how do you even identify that you have a minority or female, or how do you identify that business? What is it that you use? And the state just doesn't do a very good job at doing it. It ultimately needs to be rehauled. And so I said, we can then develop that for us. We can develop a criteria that allows people, with the input of the people, that allows them to easily come in and self-identify themselves with verification that they fall under a specific group. So if you would say it's BIPOC, then they fall under that group. The second thing is I recommended is that we do things to provide support for that group. Now, one of the things that, that is mentioned is that there are those of us who are in spaces that are primarily white spaces. There can be some challenges with that. And it has nothing to do with the people, it just has to do with the environment. And I suggest that we do not create a Black Chamber of Commerce, but that we have our Chamber of Commerce create a partnership with a U.S. or a national Black Chamber of Commerce to make sure that there are individuals who need support can get that support. It'd be similar to women. There may be some challenges that women are facing that it feels more comfortable in talking to other women who have faced it and who have achieved a level of success, and or women who are willing to advocate for the things that are right for women. And so it isn't saying that one group is bad, and it isn't even saying that the information that the group provides is not good. What it's saying is that there's additional resources that allow one to feel comfortable. Now, many of you may not know, about Morehouse College. Morehouse College is an all-male, predominantly Black college. It is a school that the most notable alum is Martin Luther King. But there are plenty other alums like Samuel L. Jackson or Spike Lee, plenty of alums in a variety of different arenas that have done some phenomenal things. But when I was at Morehouse College, I didn't have to worry about my Blackness getting in the way. When I got that F in chemistry, it's because I deserved the F in chemistry. And my teacher wasn't Black, but it took away the part of me being who I am, getting in the way of me trying to do what I was trying to do. And it allowed me to better understand from a character perspective of who I was. So when I go out into the world, regardless of where I live and who I work with and how I play, I feel comfortable with myself and who I am. And I'm unapologetic about that. And that makes me a better person to engage with. So again, there are things of the nature that, again, can be done that allow people to just feel comfortable in their space without having to prove, that they belong. They can just belong and then learn from that experience. And the last thing I recommended was the College of Business. I think the College of Business, look, we're in the Iowa City area, and the university runs many things. And the university controls culture in our area. And it does that through its students, through its faculty, through what it supports and what it doesn't support, and how it pushes things to happen or not to happen. And we understand that the university is impacted by the Board of Regents. Now, if you don't know the Board of Regents, again, that group in essence really determines how the university is going to operate and says things like, we're going to make sure that we give our money based on how many students you get from Iowa versus students that you get from other places, which inherently makes sense because it is a state institution, but that hurts the system when you realize you're getting a lot of people from other places that in essence are creating a level of culture that allows us to be able to thrive. So the College of Business has the ability to, in essence, to be able to make a difference if it really wants to. It could really help propel and move us forward, and it could be really focusing on how we, in essence, can continue to grow and to expand. But the College of Business does a terrible job of connecting with its alums that are people of color. It amazes me that for them to have all of this connection, but I realize that they don't feel that there's truly any value. And it's not based on their words, so the words are correct, but it's based on their actions. So if we can get the College of Business to really focus on business and really focus on those who are in business and what they've been doing, then I think that you would see again a level of change that would happen in the community, where many people and many entrepreneurs don't feel that they can stay here versus go somewhere else. I'm working with an alum who's back in Illinois, who started his business here, but went back to Illinois to be able to really grow his business. And so I'm trying to get him to continue to expand and build his relationships here, but he's not feeling much love. So there are things that we can do to systematically or to change some of the challenges that we have. There are things that our organizations can do. Banking, I love banking. I used to be in banking. But there are things that can be done in essence that could really allow people to feel more welcome. And most of them are not about the people. Most of them about the way the systems are set up. And those systems are set up in such a way that it makes it almost impossible to really engage. So, just a couple of other things. Again, when it came to the business partnership, I said there are several things that will happen, but what I do realize is there has to be benefit to the individual. There has to be benefit to the institution, because you have to support what your members are saying, and your members dictate what you can and what you can't do. And there are benefits to, in essence, growing the number of businesses that are out there that can be members. And so I talked about, again, targeted small business and things that could be done if we could really change and we can really identify those folks. I talk about how Black chambers could be, again, accepting to us, and again, what we could do with College of Business. Now, the one thing I realized that is, and personally that was, and I am doing and I'm interested was that there needs to be a way that people not only are getting loans, but people are truly getting true investments in their business. Because if they can get investments really in their business, they have the time to fail. And most places, if you go through, about businesses, and most of you all are business owners, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. The goal is, can you survive the mistakes? I was listening to Elon Musk, and they were talking about him and about how I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about electric cars, and they specifically were talking about him and how, several times he was at the brink of failure, and many companies around him did fail, but that for whatever reason he had the funding and he had the support, so he kept trying, and that now makes him, just like Bezos, one of the wealthiest people in the world, with a fan base of individuals that love his cars, that are fanatics and will continue to support the work that he's doing. And the writer who was talking about it, she said, but what some of the issues are is that if you really want an electric car, then you really have to have a charging station in your home. And then she said, and then some of the challenges though is that what if you live in an apartment? What is, for example, Watts going to be doing to prepare to make sure that there are charging stations in the garages, in the homes, in the apartments that they have? And if they don't have that, then will they ever be able to make that transition? And what impact will that in essence have on them? And then she went further and said, you know, but what really the bigger issue is that the public transportation system, which should really be the main people mover, if that's not really developed, then that's going to create even bigger problems. And so I think, again, as we start thinking about the solutions and the things that we put in place, we do have to really understand what are some of the going to be the challenges with some of the great things that we want to put in place, and then how do we address them up front versus address them on the back end? Because on the back end, if we do it, it becomes extremely expensive. But if we do it on the front end, it gives greater access to people to be able to do things that they want to do. What thoughts are based on what I said, and what questions do you have? And let's kind of just have a dialogue about, you know, your thinking and us and who we are and what we should be doing.
Chad, this is Kate. When you look at, you know, the banking world, and obviously there's a lot of money kind of out there, they're looking to help support some of these solutions. Are there models, other places where you see really strong programs that are changing kind of the course of how lending is happening? And you know, when we talked about the fund, it feels like every bank wants to do their own piece of this. And so it doesn't feel like it's going to have as big impact as if, like you suggest, we have more of a joint fund approach.
I think I think the challenge is with the bank is not their desire to help. I think it is how they're going to help, and do they have the resources to be able to, do they have the knowledge in one case is to be able to put the system in place to allow folks to be successful. So it's fine if they want to do their own thing. I say if they want to do their own thing, then they should do their own thing, but they should be honest about the results of doing their own thing. That's what I would say. I will tell you how the system is responding to it. In Georgia, they are starting, there is one bank, which is the largest Black bank, but it's also the largest Black bank and it's the largest internet bank. But there's another bank that is called Greenwood that's coming out of Atlanta, where they're developing Greenwood, which in essence is designed to network all of the other banks, specifically the Black banks, in essence to create the funding and the support for the businesses. So being in a market environment, what I would tell you is that if the banks don't do it well, they're going to lose a big share of the market. And the other thing I would tell you is that once upon a time, specifically, for example, in the African-American community, we understood the value of building a business and selling a business. An example that happened in the hair care industry, where most of the Black-owned hair care products were created by Blacks, but sold to predominantly white businesses. What you're seeing now is people are realizing that if we really want to grow our wealth and our well-being as individuals, that we may not want to necessarily do that. So I think Iowa has a great opportunity to be a place that is extremely welcoming and be ahead of the game, considering we grow things at Iowa. And I would simply ask the banks is that you can do what you want, but you got to be honest with your results. And here's the deal, and this is where I think that we as people of color, and specifically African Americans, we've come to realization. We understand that some people just aren't that interested in us being successful. And you can say that's bad, and you can say that's wrong, but let's just stick the morality out of it. If you understand that, the reality of that, then you understand what you need to do. And I will give you a personal example, just in general. I went to my bank. I've been with my bank for 6 years. I went to my bank and said, look, I need a loan. I want a loan because I need to set up my system to prepare for my next pandemic, whatever. Businesses, we have pandemics all the time, right? We got something, something that's getting in the way. And it's just the way life is. So I need to prepare for my next pandemic. So this is what I need. And I want it to be all on my business. I don't want it to be on me personally. I want it to be leveraged to my business. My bank has a policy that ultimately says that in order for them to give a business loan, they have to check my personal credit. That's a policy. Now for them, that makes sense because from a risk perspective, what they're trying to do is tie it to your business and to you personally. That means that they're going to eventually get their money. So it just is what it is. But what I know is that the two things I know. One thing is that my bank is the best source of helping me understand how to leverage credit, which my bank does not provide. I had to go somewhere else to figure out the whole game around credit from a business perspective. But the second thing I realized is that my bank is a short-term player in my business success. That I ultimately will not be with the bank because as much as I love the people and love the experience of working with the people, the bank does not necessarily have my best interest at heart. So when people start realizing that, it's going to start having more of a drastic input. Whereas before, what the thinking was, I just stay with my bank until my bank, figures it out, and they eventually, I come up with enough money and I convince them to do what I need them to do. Now my answer is I'm not going to convince them to do anything. What I'm going to do is what's in the best interest of my business, and if it's in the best interest of my business not to do business with that bank, I will not do business with that bank. So I think that we just have to we have to really figure out, again, systemically what's in place. And again, the banks or anyone has to say, if I'm going to try something, what's the result of that trying? Do I get what I'm trying to get from it? Or am I trying to get something more? And my concept of creating a venture capital group came off of the work of the economic development group. They came, they worked with the banks. The bank said, here's some money. They came, they put the money in a fund, and then they went out and said, we want to support Black-owned businesses, and we're going to do that by giving them grants. It was phenomenal. I think the concept was great. But what I realized is that if you have grants with no accountability to the grant, then what do you really have? You have someone that's really just trying to support you. But if you have some accountability, if you have someone really saying, let's talk really about that business, let's really think, and bankers, as good as they are with the finances, don't always understand how businesses operate. But let's talk about your business. Is it in the right location? Is it doing the right thing? Should you purchase property versus not purchase property? Should you go in and get that SBA loan? And then who should you talk to for the SBA loan? Okay, I want to do a venture school, but I already have a business. So how do I do a venture school when I have to be at my job? So the things of that nature that I realized that if I would take what was kind of created and then take it to the next level, that it could actually be extremely valuable for folks. So if we're all just simply accountable for the results that we say that we want, and we realize that we're getting them, then great. But I think that most will find out that they're not really getting them, or that they're getting them, but they're just not beneficial for the group that they're trying to support.
I might speak up real quick from the banking perspective. There is an initiative from the American Banking Association right now to help us coordinate more product development to be able to be more financially inclusive. So a lot of banks are partnering with the ABA to design these products and to make sure from the banking perspective, we have regulatory issues that a lot of our policies are surrounded. So we kind of have to, as a group, push forward and try to get some of those regulations changed so that we can offer some more items. So I think that is moving. It's moving more this year than we've ever seen it move. And I think you'll start to see more products coming out that might be more attainable.
And I think that's a very good point. I think that, again, it's about being collective and working together. I think that the bank should do that. And when I work with Citibank, you know, and we, you know, the rules and the guidelines we had to follow, you know, are definitely set to, in essence, to protect. I would just simply say that, you know, when it comes to the banks, is that I think that they're the center of the world and they're the key to the change that's going to happen. And what traditionally will happen is that either the banks will either make it happen or it won't. And I would also say is that there are some things that banks could really do. You know, when I was in banking, there was stuff we could do, we just didn't do because it wasn't in our psyche to do those certain things. We just didn't think about it that way. We didn't look at it that way. We looked at it very differently. And so we were trapped within our own regulations. We were trapped within our own mind about how we were in essence going to be able to support. And in Chicago, again, which I'm from, and they were having this conversation about regentrification. And what it really is that it is these spaces that were primarily white. Then as blacks moved in, they moved out, whites moved out. And then as the property value went down, this happens over decades, then whites moved back in. And then the taxes went up and then it pushed blacks out. And so there are things that, again, that could easily be done, that I would respectfully say that as much as I support and understand the rules of banking, that is not going to be the best excuse for why banks don't do more, because they're the center. Everyone, if you want to be a business, A, you really can't be a sole proprietor, and B, you have to have a banking relationship. Everything else is almost, you can't even do anything else if you don't have a banking relationship and you don't really have a business entity. And so that's where I just think that the banks have the ability to do more.
Chad, we've got about 5 minutes left here, and I'm just wondering if there aren't any other questions. If you want to, briefly speak to the Iowa Black Wall Street Venture Capital Fund that you're trying to kick off here, and really how it speaks to what you were just talking about in terms of this ecosystem, and that there are kind of several key players in bringing that together, and there's the accountability piece and the support piece and all of that.
I think one of the key things and what I knew that we ultimately, what our businesses needed, is they needed someone to be able to invest in them and believe in them, with helping take some of the risks that they wanted to take. But more importantly, they need to be able, businesses have to go through a certain level of pain before they can actually get to a certain level of success. And what happens is that the pain normally kills them. Now, I've invested in my business, I don't know, $750,000 in my business to set up a brand because of my intention to expand internationally. So you got to set that up front. So in doing that, you have to be intentional, but also in doing that over the past 11 years, I have had some tremendous failures to get to this place. And, you know, through the grace of God and my parents and others, and specifically my wife, who's dealing with this crazy stuff, was able to be able to survive to the point of where I am as of right now. The venture capital group is that I keep forgetting the name, but normally there are community development institutions that are out there. Most of them, we have a couple that are here in Iowa, but most of them focus on giving loans. But you can do a community development institution that really focuses on investing in businesses, that for the well-being of the business and the well-being of the community, it's going to be successful. And just as an example, my wife went to Walmart because she went to get some hair care products. She noticed that the hair care products, the size of the hair care products for Black women are shrinking, that it's getting actually smaller. She went to Sally's and couldn't find it at Sally's. And so her question was, where do I get my hair care products? Now, people don't like when I always talk about hair care, but it's one of those unique things that if you're Black, you understand that that's going to be critically important. Well, that may not be something that is going to be successful or that everyone needs, and the majority of people don't need. But if you plan on getting, for an example, successful people to come and work at your university, to work at your businesses, there has to be a part of their lives outside of that their health and well-being that is this prominent, that they can survive and they can thrive. My wife used to travel 3 hours each way to Chicago to get her hair done. 3 hours. Until she could find someone in essence that could do her hair here. And so the point I bring up is that there are ways that we need to invest in businesses that may not immediately be successful, but will have the long-term standing on how it's going to benefit the overall community. That's around food. That's around, again, health and wellness. It is a mental wellness. There are things that in essence people need that they want to be able to thrive and they want to be able to be successful, but there's some foundational things that need to be put in place. I am attempting to create attempting is not the word. I am creating a venture capital group, and the venture capital group is to invest in businesses that allows our community to be better. I want banks to work with me to say, okay, listen, give me the money, we'll show you, what we want to do, and we want to get this done. But I had to develop it within the systems that we have in place. And so a part of it is like chess. I had to wait for the right moves. I appreciate, the Kates and the Kims and I appreciate the Nancys and of the world that says, hey, listen, we're willing to partner with you and collaborate with you. We're not quite sure how, but we're willing to be able to do that. I said, great. Then I had to wait until a group called NuboCo put on something that's called Kiva that allowed people to give loans, interest-free loans to businesses. I needed that from a systems perspective so that I could be able to track my businesses. And I had to figure out how to put that in place. So now I got that in place. We had to figure out, again, what our model was of how to create board of directors for folks. Many people want, for example, people of color to be on their board of directors, and most of them are going to be volunteer boards. But very rarely do we ever get a chance to be on the board of director where it's a paid opportunity. And the reason why you want someone that's on a paid opportunity is they got a vested interest in the success of that business because it is a reputational issue related to them. The business is successful, they can say they were on the board to help make that business successful. If it's a failure, then they're crickets. They can't say anything about it. So they have a vested interest. So the gist is, we want to do things that are going to allow us to invest in the business. And we realize that needs to be directed by people who have a vested interest in the success of the business short term, that ultimately will have a vested interest in the success of the business overall. I appreciate your time. Hopefully the experience was good and you learned something. I'm more than willing to talk to you more about it. at any time that you all are willing to talk about it. But thank you very much for being a part of this.
Chad,
Thank
no,
you.
thank you. I always learn a ton from you every time that we talk, and I'm just so glad that everyone, for staying on and participating in this conversation. And like Chad said, he's always kind of willing and available to have a conversation. And I look forward to hearing more about the Black Business Venture Capital Fund. So thank you everyone for being with us today, and I hope you have a good rest of your Thursday. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Fantastic. hearing
Chad.
from you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.